When I started making music, there were no free DAWs. All of them costed $1 million, or at least it felt like it. And there were no $10 or $15 a month subscriptions. You had to shell out a chunk of change in order to record music on your computer. And even then, the software was sometimes kind of buggy. It didn't have nearly the features and capabilities that we have today. And now there are so many free DAWs that it's getting really hard to choose. And so today in this video, I am ranking the best free DAWs on this tier list, and I'm ranking them from three main factors. One is ease of use. It's got to be easy to use, open it, and get right into making music. Two, it's got to have some decent actual professional features. They don't have to be the most expansive thing ever, but it has to have some features that music producers will use on a day-to-day basis. And number three is upgradability. If you do decide to go with the paid route later on down the road, what are the best options for there, and what is the future look like for you there? Now, if you're somebody who already has a paid DAW or a few of them like myself, there's multiple reasons to keep one or two or maybe even three of these free pieces of software in your back pocket. Sometimes when you update your main DAW, things get buggy and things just kind of quit working. Pro Tools. But I ain't throwing no shade. So the ability to check your plugins and sessions on a different DAW to see whether it's your DAW or the plugins that's causing the issue is super helpful. And the second main reason that I like to have free DAWs in my back pocket is a lot of the clients that I work with don't have paid DAWs, they have free DAWs. And instead of explaining how to export or send the stems to me, I just grab a couple of the main, most popular free DAWs, and then I just have them send me the entire project file. And then I can actually see what they're already doing with it, and I can export the stems the way I want to. This is an extra step, but I optimize for getting the best song out there and the best result out there. And it's really handy and not having to go back and forth with the client on things like that. So the first thing on this list that I have to talk about when it comes to free DAWs is Waveform by Traction. This DAW has been just an absolute killer for quite a while now. And there's a couple places that I want to put it on this list for quite a few reasons. And so I have to talk about Waveform. First and foremost, there's tons of pros to this thing. It's both Mac and PC and Linux supported. It even runs on Raspberry Pi, which is those little tiny computers that are about the size of a credit card, which also blows my mind. There's no track limit, so you can add as many tracks as you want. It also supports third-party plugins, and it is fully featured. Kind of. There is one big drawback with this DAW, and the fact that it is fully featured if you buy all of the expansions. So for example, you'll get some MIDI features, but you're not going to get all of the MIDI editing features that you would unless you upgraded to the expansion pack for MIDI editing features, which is anywhere between $30 to $50. And so each little part of this DAW is a bit stripped. And if you buy all of the expansions all together, it would total around $230 US. And Reaper is a $60 DAW for non-professionals and has all of the features there. So for that reason, I am probably gonna have to put Waveform on the A tier list, because as far as ease of use goes, I really give this thing a solid 6 of 10. It's really not that bad of a DAW to use and to get into right away. As far as features, I'm gonna give it a 5 of 10 because it is stripped, but I am giving it a 7 of 10 for upgradability to really make it your own as well. Because if you don't necessarily need advanced MIDI editing features, then you don't have to buy that. And so I think as far as future-proofing yourself goes as well, it is a great DAW for that. And so for that reason, I'm gonna have to give it A tier. Now, the next up on this list is Cakewalk by BandLab. This DAW has absolutely been one of the best free DAWs for tons of years. It was been bought out by multiple different companies, and this thing has always stood up tall, but today, it's kind of falling flat for a couple main reasons. And for those of you that are curious, I'm talking about the original Cakewalk, not Cakewalk Next or Cakewalk Sonar. I'm talking about the original Cakewalk, because Cakewalk Next and Cakewalk Sonar, even though you can download them for free, they don't allow you to export the song unless you pay some money, which is a big bummer. So they're not actual free DAWs. Even though if you Google it, they will say they are free DAWs. They are not free DAWs. You cannot export the songs unless you pay. I'm talking about the original Cakewalk before it got bought out by BandLab. The pros is that there is no track limit. It does allow for third-party plugins, and this is a fully featured DAW. But there's quite a few cons that I just can't ignore when it comes to this DAW, even though I do love this DAW. First off, it's Windows only. Cakewalk Next allows for Mac and Windows, But once again, Cakewalk Next is not free. Even though you can download it and try it for free, you cannot actually export a song for free. And so the original Cakewalk is for Windows only. And the second con is that there are no more feature updates on this DAW at all. BandLab is focusing more on Sonar and Next for now, and there's no feature updates happening to Cakewalk at all. It's pretty obvious that this piece of software, for as amazing as it's been, is getting completely phased out. And so for this DAW, I'm going to give the ease of use a 7 of 10. Honestly, it's amazing, but I have to give it a 7 of 10 and not a 10 of 10 because it is Windows only and not everybody has a Windows machine. Second is I want to give the features a 7 of 10 as well. This is a very powerful DAW, but for the upgradability, which is the third factor on this list of what I'm judging all of these DAWs on, I have to give this a 1 of 10. It's pretty obvious that this is basically being phased out, and the other options of Cakewalk that BandLab is currently offering are not free DAWs. Even though you can download them and use them for free, you cannot export without paying money. And so because of that, for as much as I would love to put this as at S tier, I actually am going to have to bring this down to C tier because it's just not going to be a DAW that is used in the future. For as much as it hurts my heart, it's going to be on the C tier. Now, next up on this list is Soundtrap. Soundtrap is a browser-based DAW, and it's actually pretty neat for the most part. There's a couple things we want to talk about it though. Soundtrap is browser-based, very similar to BandLab's, and its strongest feature is the real-time collaboration that it has. There's all sorts of different stuff that you can do with it, but being able to open it up in the browser and have somebody else open up the session with you and go back and forth is actually really kind of cool. Multiple users can work on the same project simultaneously, which is actually awesome. It's great for tools like songwriting and remote collaboration and cool things like that. And it already has some stock sounds in there that aren't bad. Now, there's a ton of cons that I have to talk about with this DAW as well because it's not fully featured. It is freemium, which means that you're going to have to pay the subscription to get more advanced features. And also, this is not great as your main DAW. If you're choosing any one of these DAWs to be your main DAW, I would not recommend this DAW because it is pretty feature limited. Now, ease of use, I'm actually going to give this a 6 out of 10 because as far as getting right into the software and going with it, it's actually pretty easy to use. It's browser based. Most people can just make an account and start using it right away for free, which is not bad. I want to give features a 6 of 10 because of that real-time collaboration. That's a feature that I don't even see in most paid DAWs or basically really any expensive mainstream paid DAWs. This is just really, really cool. So because of that, I have to give it a 6 of 10, even though it is lacking some other main features. Now, as far as the upgradability, I'm going to have to give this a 2 of 10, because if this is your main DAW, you're choosing it to be your main DAW, and you want to upgrade later on down the road, there is an option to upgrade from freemium to the more premium subscription-based model, but even then, there's not a whole lot of options outside of that. It just gives you some more sounds and a couple more features. It's not going to be really helpful to be your main DAW. The audio editing is just not that great in it. There's a couple other things that are just not that great. So because of that, I'm going to give the upgradability a 2 of 10. And to be completely honest with you, for as much as I would like to put this higher on the list, I can't recommend this really to anybody. And so because of that, I'm going to have to put this on the D tier. This is a great DAW for coming up with ideas and idea generation, but I'm going to keep it in D tier because I don't want anybody really using it as their main DAW, at least for now. Now, in the light of Soundtrap, I have to talk about BandLabs. BandLabs and Soundtrap are very, very similar. BandLabs is also browser-based, and there's a lot of really cool features there as well. And BandLabs just bought out Cakewalk. There's a lot of pros to BandLab. It's browser-based. It has some stock sounds already. Once again, it's great for collaboration, and it's fully featured for the free version, unlike Soundtrap. Now, there are some downfalls of this DAW as well. For example, one of the main things is it is kind of limited. It's browser-based. You're not going to get a whole bunch of options. No third-party plugin support, which is kind of a bummer. So if you get contact libraries and things like that, you're not really going to be using that in these browser-based DAWs. And to be honest with you, I don't know anybody making professional sounding tracks with either one of these DAWs. But I will say, as far as ease of use, I give this a 7 of 10. It's great to get into. It's really simple to start making music right off the bat. And once again, it's browser based. You make an account, you get in. It doesn't really get any easier than that. So for the ease of use, I give it a 7 of 10. As far as features, I'm going to give it a 4 of 10. And really the only reason I'm going as high as a 4 is because the idea Generation, being able to pull out your phone and then immediately have it synced to your account here when you're at home is nice. And collaboration, maybe idea generating with the rest of your bandmates, is pretty helpful. And that's something that I'm not seeing in any other DAW. And so because of that, the features, I will give a 4 of 10. Now, as far as the upgradability, I'm going to do the exact same thing I said earlier, and I'm going to give this a solid 2 of 10. It's just not that great to upgrade later on down the road. And so because of that, I'm also going to be putting this down at the D tier as well. And now the 5th DAW on this list has to be Audacity. This thing, I feel like everybody is aware of right now. If you've ever messed with audio on a computer, you are probably aware of Audacity. The first thing about this DAW is that it's available for Mac and Windows, which is great. So cross compatibility is amazing. Now, it's also open sourced, and this is very commonly used. And so this DAW is actually really impressive. I love open source programs. I love the fact that they exist. And this is one of those open source programs that works really well. So there's tons of people in the developer community that are making all sorts of neat little plugins for this piece of software. Now, there is a couple cons with Audacity, and first and foremost, it is kind of feature limited. This is not really a DAW, it's more like an audio editor. So if you are editing stuff with many tracks, like we all are if we're making music, this starts to get a little convoluted, a little confusing, and things can get busy pretty quickly. If you are editing podcast episodes, this is actually a really solid option for you in that case. Now, as far as ease of use, I'm giving this once again a 7 of 10, and the fact that it's commonly used, there's tons of videos out there online on how to actually run this piece of software. As far as features, I'm gonna have to give it a 3 of 10 because the features are just not that great when it comes to more mainstream DAWs. But with that being said, there's tons of extra things as far as the developer community goes. So instead of going any lower than that, I'm going to go with a 3 of 10 on the features. Now, as far as upgradability, I'm going to give it a 4 of 10 because once again, with it being open sourced in the developer community, there's tons of extra stuff that you can do out there to add onto this DAW. Now, with that being said, this is going to be a DAW that sticks around for a while, but it's more like an audio editor and less like a DAW. But I do want to put this up at B tier because I feel like everybody probably should just have this installed on their system. It's a great free audio editor tool, and there's a lot of really cool stuff in there that you can play around with. And with it being open sourced, there's new stuff being added constantly throughout the community. Now, the next thing on this list is LMSS, or Linux Multimedia Studio. This is another one of those open source DAWs that are actually pretty impressive. First and foremost, it's open source, so there's tons of stuff out there. It's also very commonly used, and it's got a fairly simple user interface on this, which I love. It also has some of the most powerful MIDI features out of any one of these free DAWs. Now, there are a few cons to this software. The audio recording features can be a bit limited, very similar to like FL Studio, but maybe even a little bit more limited than that. But outside of that, really I have no other complaints for this DAW. First and foremost, I want to give the ease of use a 7 of 10. It's very easy to get into. And as far as features go, I also want to give it a 7 out of 10 because the MIDI editing features on this thing are so stinking powerful. And finally, as far as the upgradability, I'm going to give it a 6 of 10 just because there is no paid version beyond this. And there really is nothing else you can do other than the fact that it is open sourced. And so there is lots of community building going on in there as well. I'm going to actually give this a solid A tier. If you're somebody who makes EDM or hip hop, LMSS is not a bad option. With it working on Mac, Windows, and Linux, it really works with a lot of different systems. It's a great piece of software. Now, next up on this list is Pro Tools Intro, or how I remember it being Pro Tools First. Pro Tools First ended up going away, and now it's Pro Tools Intro. Now, there's lots of things I want to talk about this, but first and foremost, I have to talk about Pro Tools being the industry standard. I know people are always talking about it, oh, it's the industry standard, but really at the end of the day, that's a pretty fair argument. When everybody is using a specific piece of software, whether it's the best software or not, if it's commonly used, it's available everywhere. And you can take Pro Tools Intro sessions and open them in the full version of Pro Tools. So if you make a demo on Pro Tools Intro, you can send it to somebody who has the full version of Pro Tools and they can open it up the way it is. They can also send you stuff as well, but you can only open up the first 8 tracks, which is where we start having problems with Pro Tools Intro. It is very feature limited. It is 8 tracks, including MIDI, and you can only record up to 4 tracks at the same time. So if you're recording an entire drum kit, it's probably not going to happen unless you're only using 4 mics, which is that never happens in my case. And it does not allow any third-party plugins. So if you install a third-party plugin, you cannot open it inside of Pro Tools Intro. So for ease of use, I'm going to give this a 7 to 10. It's Pro Tools. It's been around for a long time and the UI is pretty solid. Now, as far as features go, I have to give this a 3 of 10 because it is barely usable. It's great for maybe coming up with ideas and getting it down, but really at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to do any like really big productions inside of Pro Tools Intro. And once again, the full version of Pro Tools is completely feature rich. It's just this one is very stripped. Now, as far as the upgradability, I'm giving this a solid 9 out of 10 because everything that you do inside of Pro Tools Intro can be opened inside of the full version of Pro Tools. And so because of that, I'm going to give this a solid B tier. Not a bad DAW, but honestly would not be my first choice when it comes to free DAWs. Now, next up on this list has to be Luna. Luna just came out of nowhere the last couple years, and it has really risen in popularity among tons of people that I work with and people all over the internet and all over the world. Luna is designed from the company Universal Audio, which is one of the biggest audio companies in the world, highly respectable, and their free DAW is no different. There is tons of great stuff about this DAW. First of all, it's fully featured. It has some really great stock sounds already. It seems really stable now, which it wasn't always in the past. It has third-party plugin support, so you can load plugins that you buy separately into Luna. It's available on Mac and on Windows, so cross-platform. And the only difference between the free and the paid version of Luna is some of the audio processing tools that come with it. But with the third-party support, you can add and buy all different types of different plugins and still have a great time with this DAW. The only cons about this software is the fact that it's missing some stock plugins, and that's it. Other than that, there's really no complaints that I have with this DAW. So ease of use, I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. It's very easy to get into, and I love the analog layout. When you open the DAW, it makes you want to create a channel like in an analog console and a lot less digital, like in software like LMMS, for example, where it's very digital based. This is very analog, kind of going back to the roots of how music was originally made, and it's a nice kind of refreshing feeling when you open the software. As far as features, I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. I'm only docking 1 point because the stock plugins are a bit limited, but you can go out and go get your plugins anywhere else. Free plugins, paid plugins, and add them to Luna. And as far as upgradability, this is a 10 of 10. This is a fully featured DAW, and Universal Audio is a company that is not going to go anywhere for a very long time. And so I have to put this up on the S tier. Now, finally, I want to talk about GarageBand. GarageBand is a free DAW that I'm sure everybody is aware of. And if you're not aware of it, you probably just live under a rock. Now, there's tons of pros to GarageBand, but there's also a ton of cons as well. And I want to talk about both. And I have a soft spot in my heart for GarageBand because it was the software that got me into music. And I absolutely love it. And I'm so grateful that it exists. So first I need to talk about the pros. It has no track limit. You can add as many tracks as you want inside of GarageBand and just keep adding more and more and more and more ideas. It also does allow third-party support, but with some mangling. There's not really a good plugin scanner or plugin manager, and so you kind of have to do some weird things when you do want to scan new plugins into the system. It is very commonly used, and there are a ton of tutorials online. In fact, even entire YouTube channels dedicated to GarageBand. It has a ton of decent sounding stock sounds. In fact, I think it has the most stock sounds out of every free DAW that's here. And honestly, the best part of all is the fact that it's influenced so many people to make music, including myself and tons of my students. Now I want to talk about the cons, which first and foremost, it's Mac only. You're going to get this on a Mac. You're not going to get this or be able to run this on a Windows machine or on a Linux machine. You have to have a Mac or a MacBook in order to run this. Next is the plugin manager is missing, so third-party plugins can be tough. You can run them, but there's just some finagling that you have to do to even make it work. And finally, there's no bus routing. You cannot route anything to a bus. And with me doing top-down mixing, sending things to buses is unbelievably important to my workflow. But honestly, the main thing about this DAW is the fact that it has influenced so many people, including myself and many of my students, to make music. This is the DAW that got me into making music. It got my first album out there, and now this is what I do. I love this so much. And so because of that, I'm going to give ease of use a 9 of 10. I don't think there really is an easier DAW to get into. And so because of that, I'm going to give the ease of use a 10 of 10. I don't think there's an easier DAW to get into to start making music. Apple lays this out so well. Just get in and start making music. It's so easy. As far as features, I'm going to give this a 7 of 10. It is missing the plugin manager and it is missing the bus features, but I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 because there's tons of stuff like the AI drummer as well. And as far as upgradability, I'm giving this a 10 of 10 as well because you can open GarageBand sessions in Logic, which is the big brother to GarageBand. And Logic is, once again, an industry standard. Every producer that I know that has a Mac has Logic on their system, whether it's their main DAW or not, they basically have it on their system. It's everywhere. And so because of that, I have to put this at the S tier. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this video here where I break down all the free tools, not just DAWs, but all the free tools that every music producer should have. Whether you are just starting out or you have years of experience, there's a few free tools in there that I'm sure that you haven't heard of that you're going to be so thankful that you did hear of them now. That was a tough sentence to say, but you get the point. Click on that. I'll see you over there. Now, as always, go create.